Space is no longer exclusive for government agencies like NASA and the ESA. In just a few decades, space has gone from a political battlefield to a booming commercial industry where private competition is fierce. As private companies' launch calendar becomes increasingly busy, how can we ensure that these companies are chasing societal benefits instead of financial ones? For this inquiry, my fertile question is, how might we make the most societal gains from commercial companies launching into space? A private space company is a company that develops spaceflight technology that is conducted and paid for by an entity other than a government agency. The emerging private spaceflight industry is known as New Space. The two private companies I will be focusing this video on are SpaceX and Rocket Lab. SpaceX is the biggest private aerospace company in the world. They were the first private company to launch a rocket into orbit, as well as the first to launch humans into space on their impressive Falcon 9 rocket. You might be familiar with SpaceX's CEO and CTO Elon Musk, who also owns Tesla. Rocket Lab is perhaps one of the most innovative companies in the aerospace sector, inventing things like the carbon fiber rocket named Electron and their electric fuel pump. Rocket Lab was a New Zealand aerospace company founded by Peter Beck, but has been brought out by American investors, so is classed as an American company. Rocket Lab and SpaceX are the only companies that have launched rockets into orbit with their Falcon and Electron rockets respectively. The other main commercial companies I might reference in this video are Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic and ULA. Blue Origin is owned and was founded by Jeff Bezos. ULA is a very experienced rocket launching company, having done it 135 times without any rockets blowing up. And finally, Virgin Galactic. Virgin Galactic plans to capitalize on space tourism with their plans to take humans into space for $250,000 per person. There are a lot of different reasons private companies want to go to space. Blue Origin wants to play a part in asteroid mining and extract the practically unlimited resources from them, such as iron and gold. On the other hand, SpaceX's CEO Elon Musk is tunnel-minded to set up a self-sustaining colony on Mars. And Rocket Lab just wants to make life on Earth better by launching satellites into space, hence their motto, "We go to space to improve everyday life on Earth." Entities such as NASA can work on understanding basic human health or exploring the universe for the sake of a greater understanding. Private companies have a limitation. They need to eventually make a profit. So private companies are more vulnerable to cutting corners and safety measures compared to NASA, which practically is unlimited money that they get from the taxpayer, or private companies have to rely on private investors funding their missions. That said, I don't think that private companies will take shortcuts on their health and safety measures. I think that their safety reputation is something they all want to have at a gold standard. Then they'll have a better chance of catching their customers' eyes. So in summary, I think private companies go to space for exploration and colonization, but they eventually need to make a profit to stay alive. My expert Andrew from the New Zealand Space Agency, who I did have a Zoom meeting with, but the audio didn't work, also agrees with this. Andrew said that people start rocket companies because it's cool, they love launching rockets and have a vision of colonization or exploration, and profit is just a byproduct of it. It's no coincidence that we use the term rocket science to emphasize something very difficult. Space is a very expensive, very dangerous industry. 19 people have died in space or going into space. Space is the most dangerous place in our known universe. It has no breathable air, as well as being an average of minus 270 degrees below Celsius. That's just 3 degrees warmer than the limit for all temperatures. But that's not all private companies have to contend with in space. High radiation, no air, sub-zero temperatures. The point is, humans aren't meant to go to space. NASA estimates from 1961 estimated that there was a 5% chance that humans would get to the moon and back safely. So the Apollo program should have been a failure, but no one paid much attention to those grim numbers because NASA was too focused on getting to the moon instead of taking into consideration the astronauts' lives. Apart from being dangerous, space is a very expensive industry. The three most expensive space disasters add up to an astronomical $31.3 billion being lost. The most expensive space disaster ever was the Columbia Space Shuttle blowing up when it re-entered Earth's atmosphere in 2003.
Was abruptly cut off, 40 miles above the Earth, traveling at 18 times the speed of sound. Columbia broke into pieces.
That set NASA back an amazing $16.1 billion. Failure is just not an option in space. If a private company wants to get into space, they need to overcome a lot of challenges as well as being financially backed. In my experience with observing the movement of commercial space companies, I think that they are a crucial part of what space looks like today. Let's take this back to the Apollo era. NASA partnered with companies such as Boeing and Lockheed Martin to make the Apollo program possible. Boeing, a commercial company, made the first stage of the powerful Saturn V rocket. Lockheed Martin later made the massive fuel tanks for the space shuttle. NASA now contracts SpaceX to build and launch rockets into space and resupply the ISS with cargo. I think these partnerships between private and government agencies are vital for keeping spaceflight as an ever-changing industry. My expert Andrew also agrees with this statement. He says that NASA would be nowhere without the assistance of private companies. This just shows how important they are to the space industry. This graph explicitly backs up how important private companies are to the space industry. In 2019, NASA gave 90% of their annual budget to private companies. Private companies are currently doing a lot to benefit society. For example, SpaceX's Dragon crew capsule took 2 astronauts to the ISS. This is beneficial to society because now those astronauts can carry out scientific experiments that will help humans understand space more and what it's like to live there for future generations. Satellite launchers such as Rocket Lab play a crucial part in the telecommunications industry as well as the military one. Satellites allow things like Google Maps to be possible, as well as things like predicting the weather. So all these things benefit society in a massive way. SpaceX is also working on a new satellite program called Starlink. Starlink will provide ultra-fast internet to the whole world. This may be looked at as a bad thing though, because it will put all the telecommunication companies like Spark and Vodafone out of business. But I think Starlink will benefit humanity for the greater good. Now places that don't currently have internet will have access to it after Starlink is completed. Starlink is going to consist of 42,000 satellites, and SpaceX is launching them into space with their Falcon 9 rocket. The privatization of space has revolutionized aerospace technology. Things such as rockets can now land by themselves. This probably would have never been done by a government agency, as they would have to pay money for the research and they would not deem that a priority spending. But private companies have to try and make a profit, so one way they can do this is to reuse the most expensive part of the rocket, the first stage. Another key difference between private and public companies is that private companies don't get unlimited funding. For example, NASA spent $1 billion on building this launch tower. Yep, you heard me. That's 1,000,000,000,000,000. That's nearly enough to buy Buckingham Palace. I just don't think NASA can justify that purchase. Not to mention it has taken 10 years to design and build, and it is still in progress. But anyway, back to the point. I don't think private companies would waste $1 billion on a launch tower. In conclusion, after all the research I've collected, we need to make sure that the private industry is well regulated. This means countries need to continue to enforce the regulations of the Outer Space Treaty. I think private space companies are going to benefit our future in a massive way. I think they are crucial to how the future will look. I think to ensure humanity survives, we need to become an interplanetary species. Private space companies are a key part in living on extraterrestrial bodies. But as the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. If the privatization of space is managed poorly, I think we could expect to see companies become more economically focused at the potential detriment of cohesive infrastructure. I think to make the biggest societal gains from letting private companies launch into space, we need to have strong partnerships between government agencies and private companies, as well as having the Outer Space Treaty well enforced.